Winfred asks, what's the difference between cross-stitch and embroidery? Hi, my name is Elle. I'm a professional cross-stitch artist and designer here on TikTok, and I'm here to answer your questions. So when we're learning about geometry when we're in school, and we learn that a square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares, it's kind of like that. Cross-stitch is embroidery, but not all embroidery is cross-stitch. Embroidery encompasses all kinds of needlework that is made either by hand and sometimes by machine. Cross-stitch is much more specific. It is a particular set of stitches within the realm of embroidery. So if you are doing an embroidery piece, there are a ton of different kinds of specialty stitches that you can use in order to make a piece that is embroidered. In order to do cross-stitch, you're limited in the number of stitches that you're typically using. And so if you go through my tutorial videos, I specifically teach the cross-stitch stitches. I don't teach things like satin stitches or feather stitches or any of the things that are outside of the realm of what you're going to see on a cross-stitch pattern because I don't specialize in those things. So from the realm of embroidery, the types of stitches that you're going to see when doing cross-stitch pieces are going to be cross stitches, 1/2 and 3/4 stitches, which are again in the realm of cross stitches. You might see French knots, some back stitching, and that's pretty much it. Another big difference between embroidery and cross-stitch is embroidery can be worked on basically any type of fabric. Cross-stitch, on the other hand, is typically worked on Ida cloth only. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. You can use linen, you can use even weave, things like that, but basically these are all cloths that are going to have a very specific weave pattern so that all of your little X's come out perfectly the same size as all of the other ones. Whereas with embroidery, it's different. Your stitches are all going to be different sizes because you're using different types of specialty stitches across your piece in order to give it the shape and the texture and the colors that you want it to come out looking as. If we want to do cross stitch on another type of material, like if I want to work something onto an article of clothing, I'm typically going to use an intermediary medium. So I'm going to put waistcloth down first on top of whatever material I'm working. I'm going to do all of my cross stitching on top of the waistcloth, and then I'm going to pull the individual threads of the waistcloth out so that we are just left with the cross stitch on the fabric that we want to be using. The way that I tend to describe the difference between these two types of needlework is embroidery. You're an artist and you're very open-ended. You are doing all of the designing, the color decisions, the sketching, all of it yourself, but with a needle and thread. Cross stitch is a lot closer to like a paint by numbers. So you have a pattern that you are working off of, you are using the colors that that pattern tells you to use, and you are putting those in exactly the same places that the pattern is telling you to do it. So if two people sat down and did a paint by numbers or a color by numbers, their images are going to look the same when they're finished. Whereas if you gave a rough sketch outline to two separate artists and said, you can use whatever medium you want, you can use whatever colors you want, and all you had to go off of was this rough sketch to begin with, you're going to end up with two pieces that are very, very different. Even if they chose the same colors, their finished pieces are going to look very different from each other, and that's the difference between cross stitch and embroidery. Embroidery is going to be those two separate artists who are doing things their own way. They're making all of their own decisions, even so far as where they are putting their needle for each single stitch is going to affect how their finished piece is going to turn out. So those are really the main differences between embroidery and cross stitch. Like I said, cross stitch does fall into the embroidery category, but not all embroidery is cross stitch. I hope that helps. Happy stitching.